Hey everybody, welcome back to A Brief on Grief. For this video, I'm going to take another little break away from the myths of grief that we've been talking about lately, because something is just so profound in me right now that I just got very inspired to make a video on it and to share with you about it. So this is what I'm doing today in this one. So today I wanted to tell you about my experience from listening to a podcast last week from Brene Brown, and she interviewed Dr. Vivek Murthy, and he's a researcher in the area of loneliness and connection. I could do a whole couple of videos on just this podcast, and I may do that later. But the things that came up in it and the link that I made with grief is what is bringing me here today to share this with you. As Brene outlines in her research and has for years, and this Dr. Vivek also shares, is that a basic human need, just like shelter, food, water, is connection. Love. So love is another thing that we need to survive and thrive. And the main reason that we receive, or the main way that we receive love and give love, is through authentic, genuine connection with people. He talks about different areas of loneliness and different areas of our lives where we can feel lonely and disconnected. But Brene said something profound in that podcast, which made the link to grief. And shame, of course, that's a whole other topic. And you know what? I'll probably make a whole other series on shame. And I'm going to try not to run away on the shame train in this video right now, because that's another thing that's really amping up in me to want to talk about. But I will try to save that for a future video or video series. One thing Brene said in that podcast, she said, wow. She's like, we have actually, as a culture, so by our culture and by the core beliefs and things that we've gained and learned from our family, unconsciously, not consciously by our parents. They consciously don't want to teach us things that are going to hurt us and make us suffer. But we have been shamed out of our need to need people. So because human connection and our ability to have that human connection and love from people is a basic human need, if we live in a culture where that has progressively been shamed on us, again, I could go on forever about this topic, but I want to stick to the link to grief. So as I sat with that, I was blown away by this podcast and being moved by it for like a day or two after. And again, a week later, I'm still being moved from it to want to sit down and chat with you on video about it. So the fact that we have a culture that has shamed us out of one of our basic needs is, I don't even have the word for how powerfully sad that is. Imagine having somebody shame you. So shame is that feeling where you feel not worthy, not good enough, like you're a bad person. Like if you're struggling too much with grief and painful feelings and you feel like you need to reach out to people, we're shamed out of reaching out to people when we're suffering. We're shamed out of needing people. So imagine if you're like shamed for needing water to survive, or shamed for wanting to have a roof over your head to survive. Think of how absurd that is. This is just as absurd, and this is just as destructive to our happiness and ability to thrive and feel loved in life. No wonder so much of us are suffering. No wonder our world is suffering. It's so profound. Again, I could talk forever on it. But I will bring it back to grief. So I thought, wow, this relies so much with grief, because when we feel shame, so as Brene will tell you in so much of her research, when we feel shame, it sets off like our flight or fight stress brain. We feel so uncomfortable that we just want to run away or we want to shut down. And part of that is just needing to isolate ourselves and get away from that feeling. So we're either like aggressively trying to put it on somebody else so that we don't feel the pain of it, or isolating ourselves. Isolation is usually involved eventually, whether it's our first step or later on. And shame thrives in isolation. So we suffer more in shame if we isolate ourselves when we feel that way. What's another thing that also thrives and creates more suffering in isolation? Grief. So the more we try to deal with shame, grief, all the painful feelings that are included in grief, in isolation, the more we suffer. It's so profound. Shame is so profound in so many areas of life and so much human suffering. But this link to grief is what brought me here to tell you about it today. So I think I will cut it off there for now. And I'm going to share this quote by Brene Brown. We run from grief because loss scares us, yet our hearts reach towards grief because the broken parts want to mend. So again, another reminder, like I've been saying through all these videos, and Brene would say many times in her work, let's be brave, let's be courageous, let's be courageously, bravely vulnerable. Recognize that we need people to feel loved. We need people to survive and thrive in this lifetime. And let's fight the shame against that. It's absurd. It's crazy. Let's connect. Let's love. Let's heal this world and ourselves. Okay. Bye, everybody.